I was actually at an event a few years ago. Went up to the organizer to introduce myself. She didn't know who I was, and she asked me. She said, "Do you know when the speaker is arriving?" And I said, "Well, that's me." And she said, "No." She said, "I mean the Speaker of the House of Representatives." And I said, "Well, yes, that's me too. I'm the Speaker of the House of Representatives." She looked at me. She looked me up and down, and finally she said, "Gosh, you don't really look that important." It's a very humbling experience running for office. But she's on to something. I'm not. Whether you're a U.S. Senator or the Speaker of the House, whether you've got a fancy title or you're an ordinary citizen, we're all of equal value. And that is really the principle that guides my work in public education. The truth is, if we've learned anything from our experiment over the last couple hundred years, it's that in some ways, the most important way to improve student achievement is to also help folks at home, to make sure that parents have the support they need and the skills they need and the time they need to help their students succeed as well. I'm proud to bring to this race a longer record of legislative leadership and a deeper grounding in the schools of Colorado and the experiences of parents and students and teachers than anybody else in this race on either side of the aisle. I've spent more time in the classrooms of Colorado than my Democratic opponent, or to the best of my knowledge, either of the Republican candidates as well. And I'm not just talking about my own classrooms. I'm proud to have spent almost 15 years teaching in Colorado's community colleges. Like Eileen, I've been a professor, or an adjunct professor at the Community College of Aurora, and Red Rocks, and Metro, and CU Denver, and to burn about as much as it takes to get the gas mileage from here to those schools. I started teaching 20 years ago at a program called Summer Bridge that helps students make the transition to high school. I went down to Central America after I finished college to teach in rural schools in Nicaragua and Costa Rica. And I came to Colorado and became an instructor here as well. I want to talk about what I learned from those experiences and from the conversations I've had in other classrooms across the state. I spent a good deal of time traveling around Colorado and visiting classrooms in places where the buildings were falling down, the rooftops were caving in, or the floorboards were too rotten to hold up a desk. Here's a couple lessons I draw from that work, and a couple lessons I will apply to my work in the U.S. Senate. One, public education is the single greatest achievement, the single best engine of economic prosperity and opportunity the world has ever seen. And we ought to recognize that and acknowledge it and applaud the work of the people who are willing to commit so much of their lives to that endeavor. We don't say that often enough. We deny it when times are tough, and we shortchange our schools and blame them, saddle them with the problems that society itself has shoved off. Second, I'd say this. I'm not satisfied with the status quo. Frankly, I don't know anybody who is. Until this state in particular can create the single finest system of public education on the planet, we should not be satisfied. We should not rest. There's no reason we can't get from here to there. Colorado is blessed to have higher incomes on average than all but 9 or 10 other states in the Union. There's no reason we have to rank 37th in funding for K-12 or 49th in public support for higher education. We can do better, and we should. And that's the third lesson I'll point to. It seems to me our goal with respect to public education, not just in Colorado, but in America, is to help every single child fulfill his or her God-given potential. That's what this mission is about. It's what my career is about. It's why I'm running for the U.S. Senate in the first place. I began my career in the field of civil rights. When I became 21, I went to Montgomery, Alabama, to work for the Southern Poverty Law Center to fight the Ku Klux Klan and neo-Nazi groups that a lot of people believe are some kind of relics of some ancient past. They're wrong. They're not. Those groups are doing harm, lynching and murdering people in the U.S. of A. today, not in some distant century or some distant land, in this country, now. The job I took at the Southern Poverty Law Center was the most rewarding I ever had. I told a reporter a few years ago, it was the kind of place that paid you to get up in the morning and do good and fight evil. The reporter thought I was talking about the state legislature. That's a totally different line of work. When I left the Southern Poverty Law Center, I went to work for a state civil rights agency to supervise an investigation of employment discrimination. I got asked about that job this morning on a debate. It was supposed to be a debate, actually, but like tonight, my opponent didn't show. We've had 2 debates today, 3 now, at which I'm the only candidate standing. I recognize that he's got a job in Washington to do. But the truth is, it seems to me, if you're willing to accommodate your constituents, you ought to find room in your schedule to show up. In any event, I went to a state civil rights agency because I recognized that a lot of folks were being denied opportunities to get a decent job. And racial bias in the labor market is still present, not in some distant century or some distant land, but here, today. It turns out, of course, the best way to make it possible for more people to get the jobs they need to support their families and fulfill their potential is to invest in education. There is no substitute for this investment. Colorado, unfortunately, has not recognized that fact. We lag the rest of the nation when it comes to supporting schools. That's a mistake, and we're paying for it. Our kids are paying for it. I can't tell you how many students I've met around the state who didn't get access to high-quality early childhood education, who didn't find a top-flight teacher in every classroom, or even a safe and healthy building in which to learn, or students for whom the doors of higher education were closed because we have not made a commitment as a state to keep those doors open to students of modest means. That's not acceptable to me. It should not be acceptable to you. It's not acceptable, or it's not even American. I believe we have done a disservice to our fellow citizens by shortchanging these investments. That's why I led the fight in the legislature to expand access to high-quality preschool and full-day kindergarten, to add 25,000 more kids to the slots of early childhood education.